Welcome to the From Egypt to Zion show if you are new to this channel. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. This is a From Egypt to Zion show special end time prophecy update. The subject of today's matter is why it is not time for the African diaspora to return to the motherland, known as Africa, and the problem with the Go Back to Africa trend. The history behind true Israel's captivity. To understand why it is not time for true Israel to return to the land where their ancestors were taken captive from and spread throughout the world, one must understand the history behind Israel's captivity. Deuteronomy chapter 28 explains in great detail what the Most High Yahuwah's stipulations were regarding the commandments and how they needed to be kept, and the consequences of what would happen to Israel if they did not keep the commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1 through 14 expressly informs Israel how they will be blessed if they kept Yahuwah's commandments. Here are the blessings paraphrased. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all of the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Here's biblical proof that Israel inherited the curses because they did not keep Yahuwah's commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15 through 68 proves Israel went into captivity and inherited the curses as a result of not keeping Yahuwah's laws by trying to emulate the heathens and their lawlessness. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15 through 68. The curses paraphrased. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. The Go Back to Africa trend. Many Black conscious groups and Black repatriation groups for Africa and YouTubers are advocating for the return of Black America and Blacks around the world to the African continent. However, when Black people get to the continent, there are extreme financial and just overall unnecessary challenges. Although the natives of many of these African countries appear to be friendly and welcoming, what are their true motives towards Black people who come from America and other countries who are from the diaspora, who are not from the African continent? Is moving to the African continent a good idea? Will you be able to purchase land, establish businesses, have safety and security, have equitability with the natives? Will you be satisfied with the technology, the laws, how things operate, as well as the economic setup in order to sustain living in Africa? Is it time, according to prophecy, to return now, or does the scripture warrant us to wait on directions from the Most High Yahuwah? These are things you need to consider before moving anywhere in the world. The illusion that leaving America for Africa will bring happiness and peace. The problem stems with believing that leaving America, or any other country for that matter, will be better than the problems that you left one continent or country for another, and that it will be much better. This kind of thinking is sheer ignorance, especially without consulting the word of Yahuwah. Additionally, many people hate the word of Yahuwah and will totally get in their feelings and become angry at this message and angry at me for speaking the truth. However, I could care less about anyone's feelings. I care more about helping people to find salvation. Therefore, it is my duty to sound the alarm and spare not. This video was made for the purpose of edification and restoration of a people to their Elohim, and not made to be a competitive discussion on whether African Americans and the African diaspora suffered more from slavery and colonization, or if Africans suffered more from apartheid and colonizations by outsiders. Because the harsh reality is that both groups suffered and continue to suffer as a direct result of not keeping the laws, precepts, and statutes of our Elohim. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 reads at verse 7, For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause Yah shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Many Black people are looking for a way to escape racism and white supremacy, and they think that just by picking up and moving away from the U.S. to the continent of Africa, that they won't receive racial discrimination. Many Black people want to find peace and run away from racism and a downtrodden life. This is understandable. However, we must use wisdom. Many people have the misconception that just because they move to a continent where the people predominantly have dark skin, like they do, that they will be widely accepted and treated better, when that is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, sometimes the very people that look like you won't accept you, whether it be for jealousy, or seeing you as an outsider, or believing you are there to take over their land. They may want to take control of your wealth because they don't have the resources you have. Yet these native Africans will never do this to their Caucasian oppressors, nor to non-Black people who move to the continent, as they lack the power to do this to them because they are too busy trying to emulate their oppressors. Hosea 4:6 reads, My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. Comparison of struggles for Black people who moved to Africa versus struggles in America. Many people have moved to the continent of Africa and have had negative experiences, even though some of them will refuse to admit it. Then there are some who have moved to the continent to find a better life away from the U.S. and were killed on the continent. Many taken financially advantage of, as natives will often raise the price for sales of commodities and purchases. Some have experienced lack of resources, which made their lives even more uncomfortable in the African continent than they would have experienced back in the U.S. While others have experienced unnecessary hardships, some have experienced conflicts, lost great amounts of money on shady investments, while some have been put in extreme situations on the African continent, which they would not have experienced had they stayed in the United States of America. There may be some African Americans who will settle in Africa because of negative experiences in America and abroad, but moving to the continent without consulting the Most High can do more harm than good. Moreover, some diasporans have had to return to the USA and other non-African countries because they have come to the realization that the grass is not greener on the other side. A lot of our brothers and sisters on the continent act hostile and aggressive to us as if we are invading their space, when in reality, many of us have come there to repair the breach by offering our talents and income to uplift the downtrodden state of many countries in Africa. Yet the very people who have raped, pillaged, and colonized Africa get better respect and treatment. so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 54. The challenges of establishing roots in Africa. First and foremost, without faith in Yahuwah, without keeping his commandments, laws, and precepts, and without understanding biblical prophecy, you will always experience challenges and hardships. Additionally, it is going to be difficult to establish roots in a place where you are seen by most of the native Africans as an outsider. Fact is, if you were not born on African soil, you will be treated as an outsider in Africa. There are even those who were born on the African soil, but who were raised in the United States of America or other non-African countries, who are also seen as and treated as an outsider by the natives and the African governments, and that is by grand design. Many of these nations have government alliances with other nations who do not consider your best interests, but rather are more into preserving their traditions and resist positive change, as well as resist restoring severed alliances with those whose ancestors were descendants from Africa because of their pride. Although the continent of Africa has great resources, the natives do not wield the knowledge on how to utilize the resources to advance its technological position on the global stage. This can only be accomplished by Africans on the continent reuniting with the Black diasporans in the US and abroad, whose ancestors who are ancestors of those who were taken out of Africa and enslaved against their will. Without uniting with these diasporans, Africa will continue to be just a developing nation. When Africa was invaded by the Portuguese, Spaniards, and Europeans, the best of the best was taken out of Africa, and Africa never recovered. Current challenges: lack of infrastructure, slow technology, lack of knowledge, too much pride, and lack of trust of Black diaspora, which impedes unification with the rest of the diaspora. Barriers to the African diaspora uniting. The fact is, many countries in Africa are colonized by the Europeans and the Asians, and Africans are subject to their laws. Additionally, many natives try to emulate the colonizers. This is still the case today. Although they won't admit it, some native Africans are jealous of the resources and knowledge that many African Americans and other Black diasporans have received from living in the USA, the Caribbeans, and the European nations. And they are alienated from the Black experience of racism, white supremacy, and oppression in which Black Americans experience in the US and other nations, and to this day continue to experience to the greatest extent in the US. Many African natives see Europeans, Caucasians, Asians as their saviors instead of their oppressors. They look at Black Americans, Jamaicans, and other diasporic Blacks as the outsiders because they hold indoctrinal beliefs which they learned from their oppressors. Colonizers and non-African diasporic people receive better treatment in Africa. It is well known that many Europeans or Caucasians and Asians can establish themselves on the African continent and do whatever they want, including living better on the continent than even many of the native Africans themselves. This is due to the colonization and the fact that many African nations have sold their countries short to the Europeans and Asian nations and have not benefited nearly from these nations, from the resources and powers that they have literally given away to these nations. When are African nations going to wake up and face reality? When are they going to realize that the colonizers are not their friends nor our friends and that we are all we have? When are we going to realize that we are being used as pawns against each other by the very people who enslaved our ancestors, which caused the division and separation in the first place? And they let us know every day that they hate us, can't stand us, and they literally want to take everything from us and even wipe us off from the face of the earth. Yet the Africans continue to trust their genetically altered foods, their medications, their vaccines, and their word. This is insanity. Why Africa has not been able to gain power on the world stage. Although many on the African continent may not want to admit it, Africa has not been able to assert itself as an economic leader on the world stage because of the curse of Deuteronomy 28 and how they have also played a part in some of the Israelite tribes being taken captive. Many African leaders continue to engage in some of the same type of activities that caused the enslavement, mass extermination, and harm of many tribes from the continent of Africa. For example, many African countries continue to engage in government corruption and have often sold its natives and resources out to foreigners for mere trinkets. They have given away more resources than they have been able to benefit. African leaders have allowed non African diasporans to use the natives as guinea pigs through various vaccine trials, experimentation, and have allowed these same people the privilege to purchase land and often given better treatment to these people over its own natives and over those from the African diaspora. These activities have been to the detriment of many African countries, keeping Africa as an underdeveloped nation. Why it is not time for true Israel, Black Americans, and other Black diasporans to return to Africa. First and foremost, you must understand Bible prophecy. Without Yahuwah and his word, it is impossible to find true peace. It will be difficult to impossible to find true purpose in your life. Moreover, you will make poor choices and will not be able to know the plans Yahuwah has for you. The truth is, it is simply not time for Black people from the diaspora to return to the motherland, as Africa needs to be purged of the rebels and the whole continent needs to be cleansed in order, must be restored by the Most High Yahuwah. And here is biblical proof. Deuteronomy chapter 30 and 4. If any of thine be driven out unto the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. Isaiah 65 and 9. And I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob and out of Judah, an inheritor of my mountains, and mine elect shall inherit it, and my servants shall dwell there. Matthew chapter 13, verse 49. So shall it be at the end of the world, the angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. Matthew chapter 13, verse 41. Son of man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and them which do iniquity. And then shall he send his angels and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost parts of heaven. Matthew chapter 24, verse 31. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. The scepter shall not part from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So you see, family, this is why it is not time for the Black Americans and Black diasporans to return to Africa because corruption still persists there. There will not be equality, and the Most High must purge unrighteous people, not only from around the world, but he's going to purge them also from the continent of Africa in order to make it safe for us to be able to inhabit again. Reparations must occur in Africa and in the U.S. Relationships between Africans, African Americans, and other African diasporans whose ancestors were sold into slavery must be mended. To accomplish this feat, it is going to take true forgiveness on the parts of African Americans and the rest of the Black diasporans. It's going to take trust on the part of the Africans on the continent and a truce between all of these groups, which won't happen without a fight from the other nations currently in power, which is going to lead to World War III, because those nations in power are afraid of the powers and spiritual awakening that will occur when the African Americans and the rest of the Black diasporans, which include Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and the remnants of the 12 tribes of Israel, uniting with Africa, the entire Israel, which is destined to happen as it has been prophesied and written of in the book of Zechariah, Zephaniah, Isaiah, Daniel, and Revelations. And family, I pray that this presentation has been a blessing to you. And if it has, leave your comments, like, share, and subscribe. To make donations, send to from Egypt to Zion at Gmail or at patreon.com/ From Egypt to Zion show. And family, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, peace and shalom.